Okay, you're a Spartan warrior. You're standing out on a dirt field, sweat dripping down your face, with your heavy shield just resting against your arm. You've trained your entire life, literally every waking moment, for the brutal, up-close reality of hand-to-hand combat. But then, right out of nowhere, you feel this vibration starting deep in the earth. It's not marching feet, and it's definitely not cavalry. It's this deep, guttural, mechanical roar. And then, coming over the crest of the hill, is something totally impossible. It doesn't breathe, it doesn't bleed. It's just this massive block of jagged geometry tearing up the ground, and it isn't stopping. You, a Spartan, are staring down a modern M1 Abrams tank.
So, do you run? Or do you lean on every single thing you know about war? Now, I want you to just forget everything you've learned in school for a second. Toss out those flashy, chaotic Hollywood battles, and just answer this honestly. If a guy has trained his whole life with absolutely zero fear of death, and he's patiently studied your every single weakness, does your advanced weapon even matter anymore? Because today, we're not just doing a steel versus steel comparison. We are looking at mind versus machine.
All right, let's dive right into Section 1, Weapons Made of Men, breaking the primitive myth.
Before we go a step further, we absolutely have to kill this one massive myth right out of the gate. Ancient warriors weren't primitive. They weren't just running around swinging swords wildly, hoping to get lucky. No, they were calculated, icy cold, and terrifyingly effective in ways we honestly have a hard time wrapping our heads around today. Just look at the scale of their discipline. The Mongols, they didn't have GPS or supply trucks or some cozy base camp to fall back to. They carried everything they needed on their bodies and their horses. They could ride 80 miles a day for weeks straight, literally sleeping in the saddle. It's wild. Then you have the Spartans. Their legendary training started at age 7. Stripped from their families, starved so they'd learn to be cunning, and beaten to forge this absolute, unbreakable mental resilience. Every day for 23 years was just war. And the Romans, they weren't just fighters. They were basically combat engineers. They'd build entire fortified cities every single night on the march. Their formations were so incredibly disciplined and adaptable that the US military still studies them today. The point here is these weren't just guys fighting with weapons. These guys were the weapons.
Moving on to Section 2, the unstoppable modern tank. We've got to respect the beast.
Let's be fair here. We have to acknowledge exactly what kind of nightmare these ancient warriors are staring down. The M1 Abrams tank is a total monster, period. It's the absolute pinnacle of modern engineering, and to really grasp this scenario, we need to respect its raw power. 2 feet. Just keep that number in your head. Its main gun fires these depleted uranium darts that rely entirely on extreme kinetic energy. When that thing fires, the projectile is flying at supersonic speeds, and it punches straight through 2 solid feet of reinforced steel armor like it's absolutely nothing. And hey, if you think you can just hide in the dark and wait it out, no way. It has advanced thermal vision. It sees your body heat radiating through thick bushes in pitch-black darkness just as easily as it sees you standing in an open field at noon.
And beyond just the firepower, think about the physics of this thing moving. 45 miles per hour. We are talking about a 68-ton monster, literally the weight of a house cruising at highway speeds. It tears across rough terrain way faster than anything that heavy has any right to. Plus, it's not fighting alone. It's plugged into a digital battlefield, talking to satellites and drones in real time. It knows exactly where you are and where you're trying to hide, probably before you even move. So let's just state the obvious. If you put this machine in a wide-open field, broad daylight, full fuel, with air support overhead, the ancient warriors lose in under 60 seconds. End of story. The supersonic main gun, the machine guns, zero cover. It would be total, absolute annihilation. No debate.
But here's where things get super interesting. Section 3, cracks in the machine. The rules of war change.
War is never just about ideal conditions, right? A tank is incredibly powerful, but only in the specific environment it was designed for. And this is the massive pivot of our whole explainer. Ancient warriors never fought in ideal conditions. That was literally their entire strategy. When you take away the ideal setup, you start seeing the cracks. Let's look at crack number 1, fuel. An Abrams tank burns about 1 gallon of jet fuel per mile. 1 gallon, every single mile. That is a crippling reliance on this massive, totally vulnerable line of fuel trucks. If you ambush those trucks and cut the fuel, boom, your terrifying monster is suddenly just a 68-ton paperweight. Now compare that to the Mongols. They didn't need a massive convoy. They just needed the steppe. They just needed grass for their horses. That is an endless, completely unbombable supply line because, well, you can't bomb grass.
Which brings us to crack number 2, terrain. Sure, a tank dominates a flat, open desert.
But what if you drag it into an ancient, dense forest? A 17-foot gun barrel literally cannot turn if it's wedged between massive trees. Or what about a deep swamp? 68 tons of steel is going straight into the mud. It'll throw its tracks, and suddenly the crew is trapped in a metal box. Ancient commanders knew the Earth intimately, and they knew exactly how to use brutal terrain to completely neutralize a technological advantage.
Just think about the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae. They were facing thousands of Persian soldiers who had all the advantages in range, speed, and numbers. But the Spartans forced the fight into a single, blind, tiny mountain pass. Overnight, all those Persian advantages just vanished, and that exact same tactical genius destroys a tank. You don't fight the Abrams in an open field. You lure it, you drag it into a bottleneck where its speed and its range drop to absolute zero.
Then there's crack number 3, and it's something people mesmerized by tech always seem to forget. The crew is human. Inside that impenetrable steel beast are just 4 guys. 4 flesh-and-blood humans locked inside an incredibly loud, vibrating, sweltering box. They rely completely on digital screens and tiny periscopes to see out. If you smash those optics, you plunge them into total sensory deprivation. These are guys who feel fear, who get confused, who desperately need sleep. Eventually, the human mind breaks.
And the Mongols? Oh, they understood psychological warfare better than anyone. They didn't just attack walls, they attacked minds. They'd send one guy up to a city and just say, "Surrender, or we leave nothing standing." And entire heavily fortified cities would just give up out of pure terror without a single arrow flying. Now imagine applying that exact terror to an isolated tank crew in the pitch black. The engine is off because they're out of fuel. Unseen enemies start banging rocks on the hull, smashing the cameras, lighting smoky fires over the air vents. History guarantees us that this kind of relentless psychological pressure cooker breaks people. You don't even have to pierce the armor.
Which leads right into crack number 4. The crew has to come out. A tank is a weapon, guys, not a permanent underground bunker. You can't stay sealed in there forever. From the second that engine turns on, there is a biological ticking clock. They need water, they need fresh air, they need food, REM sleep, and eventually that highly complex machine is going to break down and need physical repairs from the outside.
This is where the ancient art of the siege comes into play. The Romans were absolute masters of this. At Alesia, they literally built a wall around the enemy and just lived there. They could sit and wait for months. No frustration, no quitting, just weaponized patience. Imagine the sheer terror for a stranded tank crew. They look out their viewports, and they don't see guys wildly attacking the armor. They just see warriors sitting there, sharpening swords, cooking food, just waiting for the tank's supplies to run dry. The Romans wouldn't even need to blow the tank up. They'd just wait. And in a week, that starving, hallucinating crew is opening the hatch.
All right, Section 4, history already proved it, because this isn't just theory.
Here is the part of the explainer that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. We don't have to guess if this works. It's not a fun hypothetical. History has already proven it. In modern times, this exact David versus Goliath dynamic has stopped global superpowers dead in their tracks. Just look at Vietnam and Afghanistan. In Vietnam, fighters used endless patience, massive underground tunnels, and hidden traps to completely neutralize the most powerful military on Earth and all their heavy armor. In Afghanistan, superpowers walked into those jagged mountains with all the tech in the world and walked out defeated. How? By literally using the ancient playbook: unforgiving terrain, immense patience, psychological pressure, guerrilla ambushes. They dragged the modern machines into the mud and rocks where all those fancy microchips couldn't save them.
So let's wrap this up. Section 5, the final verdict. Mind over machine.
If you put this fight in a parking lot, the tank wins, obviously. But if you take away the fuel trucks, force that massive machine into a mountain pass, cut the comms, and surround it with warriors who have trained their entire lives and literally feel nothing when looking death in the face, suddenly, that invincible machine looks pretty fragile. The big takeaway here is that the greatest weapon humanity ever built isn't made of steel, and it doesn't run on jet fuel. It's the human mind that simply refuses to quit. And those ancient warriors? They had that weapon in unlimited supply.
So I'm tossing it over to you. In the ultimate test of strategy and endurance, who are you betting on? The tank or the ancient warriors? Drop your answer down in the comments. I read every single one of them. Also, if this breakdown made you think a little differently about history and warfare, do me a favor and hit that like button. It takes 1 second and really helps push these explainers out to more people. See you in the next one, where we're tackling something even wilder: an ancient naval fleet versus a modern destroyer. Can wooden ships actually do anything against radar-guided steel? You're definitely going to want to stick around for that one.